So welcome everybody. I'm with Dylan Kresak, who is the chairman of Westminster College Young Americans for Freedom Chapter. Dylan was actually at the Trump assassination attempt earlier this weekend, and we're really excited to hear his side of the story. Welcome, Dylan.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, so Dylan, so how about you walk me through exactly what happened from your point of view? I know it's crazy, so
Yeah.
some of the
Yeah.
details might be a little bit fuzzy, but what happened from the start to when you left and everything
Yeah.
after that?
Well, I think it's important to start with getting into the event because I don't think people understand just the sheer amount of people that actually want to see Donald Trump. And I honestly didn't even realize it because I hadn't been to a rally before. I've never really been to any big political event. I mean, I've been wanting to. That's why I started a YAF chapter, because of my interest. But I really hadn't realized just how popular he is. I mean, sure, you see it on the news, but they try to cover it up. But you don't see it until you actually go to an event and see it yourself. And we were waiting in line for about an hour and a half in 90-degree weather. It was crazy. There were no shade spots anywhere. It's interesting because they didn't seem like it was the most prepared event, which you noticed right away. They'd have trash piles everywhere. It was starting to remind me of Woodstock '99 when I started to see just the sheer amount of people waiting in line and all the plastic trash just everywhere. But what I noticed was other people that I talked to in the line, they were saying the same thing that like they wanted to experience the sort of Trump effect for themselves because they didn't realize just how popular he is, and because they'd also not seen any Trump events. So after we waited in line for about an hour and a half, we noticed that the line was getting more and more crowded behind us, and I think they were letting people in until well into the start of the event. And I think the first speaker was at about 3:30. We got in around 2 o'clock. Um, the interesting thing about that is my dad had sunscreen with him, which was in an aerosol can. But this Secret Service agent that was checking us in, he said, "Oh, this is fine. It's not aerosol. You can take it in." He was like, "It
Wow.
is," but he didn't like fight him or anything. Which
Yeah,
at the time we're thinking that whatever because we don't get it burned, and we still kind of did because you're sitting in the sun for all that time. But now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, well, why did he let him take that in? Because he had, I mean, it was obviously a metal can. What's up with that? So I thought that was a little weird. And then, like I said, we got in around two. The crowd was already kind of building up, but it definitely was not even close to its peak. We were able to push through almost to the front of the crowd. We got about 50 feet away. If we can, I can send you the pictures and you can show your audience.
for
Um,
sure.
we were pretty close, relatively close. I think we really could have walked up the aisle because they had about, I want to say like a middle seating and then two outside with aisles in between and on the outsides. That's from what I could tell because there was already people everywhere. Um, so we would have been to the right of the left grouping of seats. They had the left group, the middle, and the right. We were in between the middle and the left. There's no reason, there was nobody stopping you from walking all the way to the front and standing right up front, right where Trump was going to be. There were some people up there, but we easily could have crowded our way there, which in hindsight would have been bad because we would have been closer to where the gunshots were.
True.
Um, and we had hesitated because we were like, oh, we might get kicked out, but where was the security? We didn't see anyone that was like pushing people away. I will say there was one person we met, an 18-year-old. He didn't tell me his name, but he seemed really eager to be there. He was originally going to be in that left uh, bleacher seat. He had told my dad and I, because that's who I was with, that he was going to sit in the seats. He went there. I think he got there really early, like 9 a.m. He sat in the seats, and then they said, "Oh, you don't have a yellow wristband. You can't sit there." So they kicked him out of there. And in hindsight, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that 18-year-old could have been the one that got killed." Like, because it's so weird telling the story back in hindsight because you don't you have to think of it differently because at the time you're just like, oh, I'm meeting all these people. This is cool. It's crazy seeing how many people are
Mhm.
interested. Now it's like all these people that could have been hurt.
True.
Um, yeah. So we met that kid probably. I think it was in between the opening speakers and Trump. I want to say there were about four or five speakers. They were. I mean, they were pretty cool. Mike Kelly was probably my favorite because I worked for him. But I mean, nothing too crazy. I think Mike Kelly talked about Mark Fogel, the prisoner. Um, that's a big issue for him. But anyways, it was about an extra hour. We were waiting for Trump because he was supposed to come on at 5. He came on right before 6. Everyone's super thrilled. At this point, everyone's piling forward. The crowd was insanely packed. And you notice this with concerts too. Everyone comes for the main acts. Everyone piles in like right before.
Sure.
All those, sort of alleyway passages in between the seats, you couldn't even tell. Everyone was just piled forward. Um, and when he came out, everyone was going crazy. Everyone's phones were out. I was able to get a video of him walking on, so I have the very beginning. Obviously now that is everywhere, but um, I stopped recording right when he started talking about immigration because I wanted to read the charts that he had up, right? Um, which I'm hearing now is something that he'll do towards the end of most of his rallies. But for some
Really?
reason, he just decided to do it at the beginning. I don't. It's possible he started doing that more recently, but from what has been reported and what I know about older rallies he's done, yeah, he usually waits to use those. But he's like, oh, I don't want to use the teleprompter right now. Let's look at the charts. So yeah, so he starts looking at the immigration chart and he's pointing over at it, and I'm looking at it and trying to, because he's like, look at this arrow here, and I'm trying to look at the numbers. And it was around that time that you hear one pop. Some people were saying it sounded like firecrackers. I look at my dad. I'm like, what is that? And there were two more real fast, and he's like, get down. We were next to a guy in a wheelchair, so he was behind the wheelchair. I was next to it, and we were down while the other shots were fired. We had no idea where we were coming from. We didn't know how many shooters. We technically didn't know that it was a gun. But at that point, my dad was like, that's what it is. We need to be down on the ground. But you're in a mass of what I assume was upwards of 50,000 people. And we're towards the front. Like, if a guy's going to come down and, commit an atrocity in the crowd, you can't really stop it. Um, so we were down there for, I don't know, maybe a minute while Trump was getting, tackled by the Secret Service. And then I guess they took out the shooter. They got him up, and we actually didn't even see him get up and do, the now famous, the fist thing saying fight, fight,
Yeah.
fight. Everyone just started getting up and chanting USA, and we saw him getting pushed off. And then I saw him sort of like reach his arm out again. I think that's where the big photo came from, while he was like getting pushed off the stairs. Um, and I got a little bit of that recorded because, at this point I'm like, I got to see what's going on here.
True.
Um, and at that point he got pushed into into his car, and that was it. And then I'm like, what do we do, Dad? And he's like, just stay with the crowd because that's really all we can do. We didn't know if there was still a shooter. And at this point, our phones were in SOS mode. And I know from
Wow.
talking to Dr. Joseph Means, Myens, he was interviewed by CNN. He was in the left bleachers. I don't know. I think he might have actually been sitting right below them, but he helped the ER doctor, is my understanding. The ER doctor was the one that tried to save the victim, but this guy is the one that carried him off the bleachers. And then he was interviewed by the FBI, and according to him, they were sort of like arguing with him and denying that he had even heard gunfire and seen Trump got his ear shot off. He said he saw
That's
the
crazy.
vapor trails of the bullets. Um, and the reason I mentioned that is because as we were trying to funnel out with people, we got caught up with a couple media people because all the mainstream media cameras were all like right behind where we were standing,
Yeah.
um, sort of blocking the crowd. And that's why it was sort of like two big things in the back, then the media, and then all the people in the front, and then obviously Trump up the very front. Um, and so we're trying to walk back towards where the media is, and they're trying to get a hold of people, trying to figure out. They're asking like, "What happened? What did you see? What did you hear?" And so this one lady is asking me, "What did you see? What did you hear?" And I said, 3 gunshots. It looks like Trump got hit in the ear. He's bleeding behind his right ear. She's like, oh, are you sure those were gunshots? That's what you think you heard? I'm like, yeah, that's what happened. So I was like, why are they denying it? And when we finally had service again, and as more and more information is coming out, now we see that there was so at least supposedly a narrative by the media to deny it. I don't know if it was to, keep people from lashing out and freaking out about the situation. I don't know if it was just to cover it up, or who knows. But they were instructed to not call it an assassination attempt, not to say he was shot. They're using all this weird language, and you could see that from how they were interviewing us. Um, so that was very strange. And again, we didn't know if he was alive or dead. We saw him get pushed off, but we didn't see him do the fist, so we didn't know that he was like trying to show he was okay.
Hmm.
Um, and also, Dr. Mines, he had said that when he was with his friend, like 8 minutes, he said before Trump started speaking, he noticed that his phone was in SOS mode already, which
Really?
is strange. Yeah, and because I remember my dad had to take a phone call when we first gotten in there around noon before we started waiting in line, and I was sending texts while we were in line. So as far as I know, because it's all at the fairground, we had signal, and then as soon as everything goes down, now there's no signal. Because I was
So
trying to get calls through.
what exactly is SOS mode for people that like wouldn't know?
Sorry, what was that?
What exactly is SOS mode on your phone for people that wouldn't know?
Oh, great. You're asking a non-techie guy. It's basically when they give you very limited access to self-service, like the bare minimum. I was able to barely get a call through to my girlfriend, the first person I called. And I was able to say Trump was shot, Trump was shot. And I think she heard me say that, but she was able to pick out very few words of what I was saying.
Hmm.
So I tried to tell her I'd call her back, and eventually I was able to.
Hmm.
But it was at this point like an hour because we're sitting in the parking lot. We were scared that they were gonna like, you know, try and pat us all down before we were able to leave because we were like, I mean, technically it's a crime scene, right? But we didn't. We also didn't know that anyone had died or anyone had been harmed. We just knew there were shots, and then everyone got pushed out, and we couldn't call anyone. At least from my dad and I's perspective. And again, we didn't know the status of Trump, and we were trying to ask people, but and it was weird because we were able to get messages in, but we weren't able to send anything out. So people were texting us, we just couldn't respond. Um, so it was obviously very nerve wracking because we wanted answers. Um, my dad, I remember as we were getting to the car, he saw a life flight helicopter. Um, so we assumed Trump was in there, but now we're seeing videos, and I guess he was driven there. So I
Hmm.
don't know well, I guess in hindsight, that was probably for Corey. Now that I'm thinking about it,
Yeah.
because but we didn't know, so we were thinking that might have been for Trump. So that sort of added to our suspicion. Um, yeah, and then, like I said, I want to say it was around an hour of waiting. We finally got out of the parking lot and we were able to start driving. Then we had signal. We were able to get answers. And people were saying Trump's okay. Trump's okay. It was just his ear. And actually, I showed my dad the video of Trump doing the famous now fist and saying fight, fight, fight. And he's like, "Wait, that has to be altered video. That didn't happen." I'm like, I'm all everything on your Instagram feed, everything on Twitter is that video. I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's real.
Yeah.
Everyone's posting it. Um, but it goes to show because when you're in that moment, you don't really know what's going on because you're just seeing a piece of it. He thought that Trump got hit in the body because of how he reacted and sort of jolted a little bit and then got to the ground. So I just think it's, I guess, interesting, if that's the right word to use, maybe frightening to
Yeah.
see how everyone has, a different perspective. Who knows what other people in the crowd thought? But it was interesting also, again, maybe bad choice of word, but the crowd was so calm, even with everything that was happening. Maybe it's because people like me didn't know that someone got shot and killed, other people got hit. Maybe they just
Hmm.
thought Trump got grazed and he was fine and he got up. But it was interesting because no, I didn't know how people were going to react. People were very, very angry at the media. Everyone was pointing at the camera, yelling at them. But beyond that, people were surprisingly calm. I mean, it's possible the people up towards the front, it was different, but at least in the crowd that I was with as we were getting out of there, people were angry. There was one older gentleman that was saying we were all going to go to into town, into Butler, and go protest in an hour, but I had no idea who the guy was. I don't think anyone did. So I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know if we can trust that, guys. Um, but like I think a reasonable amount of like anger and frustration with it, but nobody was trashing the venue or freaking out or fighting anyone.
Yeah. Yeah,
So I don't know.
that part's
Maybe
interesting.
that says something about
Like,
our side. I don't know. Yeah.
yeah, like our side, if something goes bad for us, we usually react a lot more calmly and civilly.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It makes you think back to, the summer of love 2020 and how people reacted to that. I hate to think, if this had happened to, the other candidate to Joe Biden, what would the reaction have been then? Um,
True.
I mean, obviously, I wish no harm on any candidate for political office, but I hate to think what would happen. Um,
True.
and RFK, same thing could have happened to him. He had no Secret Service protection until what, yesterday, today?
Yeah. How did it feel? I know like it must have been a very like terrifying situation when you and your dad first heard the bullets. Like what was going through your mind and how'd you feel?
Well, yeah. Well, at first, I mean, I thought because I'm not very well versed in guns. I kind of wish I was in hindsight. But at first, I was like, "What is that popping?" I thought it was like a firecracker or something. Because up at college, you hear random noises all the time. You just kind of get used to it. You're like, "Oh, kids are being
Mhm.
dumb in their dorms and stuff." So maybe that was my mindset. Oh, it was just someone doing something stupid. But then, because I wasn't looking at Trump at the time, I was looking at the screen. Then I look at my dad, and when I saw the look in his eyes when he knew that someone was shooting and that they hit Trump, that made my heart sink, and it kind of terrified me because it's not very often I see my father scared or concerned like that.
Mhm.
So at that point, I was pretty much following his lead, like whatever you say, go. I was trying not to think too much because I knew if I did, I
Mhm.
was just going to be scared and that wasn't going to help anything. So my goal was just follow what he does and get out of here as fast as possible.
That makes sense.
Because, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there was something in the back of my mind saying, what if there's someone following us with a gun? But I tried not to think about it because, if there's a huge mob of people with me, if I'm going down, we're all going down. And, I guess part of me thought, at least I'd be dying for someone that I believe in,
Yeah.
and at that point, we didn't know if he was alive. So we're like, well, if he's gone, you know, what does it matter? That there was a part of us, because I know at one point we were walking, as we were walking out, because it was pretty far to get to our cars. My dad's like, if he's gone, this is like the end for our country. We this could everything could fall apart. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. So I guess you think about that, and you're like, well, if I die and it's the end of the world, I guess that's a good time to die. But you obviously don't want to. You could,
Yeah.
we value our lives, but I guess there's a part of you that thinks that way.
Yeah, I think there is definitely a lot of like bravery shown that day. One thing that I've seen is I've seen a lot of people, especially like on X, like Twitter, talk
Hmm.
about some of the Secret Service agents didn't seem as brave, and people were saying maybe they didn't protect Trump as
Yeah.
best as they should have been. What
Hmm.
do you think about that, and how does that relate to your own experience being there?
Yeah. Well, I guess I would say I wish I was a little more brave because I was more confused than anything. Um, Now I feel like I'd be more alert to it now that I've gone through something like this once. But talking about them specifically, I hate to say it, but I think you're seeing sort of the issues with DEI in real time. When I first started doing activism at Westminster and we started talking about DEI, I was concerned because I'm like, what if we can't show the ramifications of this kind of policy and this kind of initiative in the workplace and in our schools? But then you see it with these unfortunately you see that with these female secret service agents. Some of them are way too short, leaving the top of Trump's torso and his head, the most important parts of his body, completely vulnerable. Granted, he was pushing back against them because he's trying to get his message out there, but they're completely blocking him, or they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be protecting him. They're supposed to be a physical barrier between a bullet and him, but they can't because they're not tall enough. There's the picture of the one agent, and I believe it's the same one that couldn't holster her gun correctly. And
Yeah,
she was, I mean, according to the picture, maybe it was a split second thing. Who knows? But it looked like she was cowering in fear behind all the other agents, and that's not what you can't have that if your one job is to protect the president, and you're in that situation. You could say they've never been in that situation before, but that's your job, so you have to be ready for that. And the other agents were. So yeah, I like I said, I think it shows the problem with DEI because we know that the Secret Service has been pushing that initiative at least for a few years, and seeing how the director of the Secret Service claimed that they didn't have someone posted on the roof with the sniper because of,
yeah,
oh no, it was a tilted roof or a
yeah,
sloped roof. It would have been tough for them. That's where the snipers were posted behind Trump. Doesn't make any sense. So, unfortunately, it looks like the Secret Service failed and DEI didn't help. I guess that would be my assessment.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of what I've seen too. I wasn't there, but from the research that I've done, it's been not even a week out.
Yeah.
Initially, that's where I land on that issue. Another thing I'd like to bring up is
Hmm.
a lot of people. I know you mentioned the one guy. I think you said it was a doctor. His phone
Hmm.
was already in SOS mode. I've also seen some discrepancies between the local police
Hmm.
and like the Secret Service
Hmm.
statements and some of the federal government statements on what happened versus the local police. It seemed like even in the moment they were going back and forth a little bit. Did
Yeah.
you see any more warning signs or red flags before Trump got shot at? And then also, did you have any
Yeah.
interactions with local police or Secret Service?
Well, the first thing I'd say is I don't remember seeing any Secret Service or police in the part of the crowd.
I think Dylan cut out for a second. Let's see if we can get him back on.
And that they were patrolling outside the area, but they weren't going up to the building. Um,
Mhm. Wait, could you go back like 20 seconds? I think you cut out by accident. Dylan cut out. I hope Dylan will be back on soon. Hey Dylan, I think you cut out like a minute ago, but
yeah, I
we're
saw
back
that.
now.
Everything just shut down. I don't know what was up
It's
with
all
that.
good. It's all good.
Sorry, what did we lose there? Where were we at?
Just like you were just starting to answer the question.
Oh, right. So we were talking about Secret Service. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have any personal interactions with Secret Service or police beyond the initial entryway getting in when they were checking our stuff and making sure we didn't have weapons on us. Well, I guess they didn't check everyone. Um, yeah, I just think it was odd because I didn't see any security around where we were. And it was so easy to get up to the front of the crowd, even when we were, late relative to other people over there since the morning. Uh,
Hmm.
I was trying to think. I didn't really see a lot of police or Secret Service like guiding the crowd out when I mean, because I was part of, I'd say like the initial, I mean, I guess there were all these people that were towards the back, but by the time we were getting out there, I don't remember seeing a lot of agents like, as I was leaving. Maybe there were a few. So maybe at this point they were all, surrounding where they thought the shooter was. I'm not sure, but I guess for me it was just seeing the lack of presence
Hmm.
was odd.
Yeah, that's definitely concerning. Another question I have is when you're saying with the media, when the media was interviewing you, it
Yeah.
seemed like they already had a narrative that was against what pretty much everyone saw. Can you talk about that some more?
Yeah. And especially now that I've looked back on it, I think there was only one news source. I'm trying to remember. I think RSBN. I'm trying to remember what Right Side Broadcasting. I think is their name. They, I think, were the only ones, and they weren't with the main group. So there was a big group, which I believe was CNN, NBC, a bunch of the mainstream uh, sources that were all. They had their big cameras and their, the guys with the microphone in the suits. I'm like, how are they surviving this heat? But same with the Secret Service officers, I suppose. Um, that we're talking through the whole thing leading up to Trump speaking, and people were pointing back at them, and there were some people yelling fake news at them, and they just like pretended like they were unfazed by it. And clearly, clearly it bothered them. But it wasn't until afterwards that it really seemed like a problem because, as far as I'm aware, they never turned the cameras around to show the audience. Surprise, surprise. But they were looking to interview people. So it wasn't just my father and I, but when they did talk to us, they kept almost denying what we saw to us, or they were trying to really make us dig as if we didn't see what we saw. Because again,
Wow.
I told the lady that I heard three gunshots and I saw Trump was bleeding, and she's like, "Oh, you're sure that's what you saw? Are you sure you saw that?" Like, I'm trying to remember the exact words she used, but the way she looked at me and the way she was asking the question, it was like she wasn't there when she clearly was. And
Yeah.
everyone, I mean, maybe she wasn't looking, but it was as if we were in a different reality. from her.
That's
And the
crazy.
yeah, and it's just strange because I thought I was alone and it was just like a weird interview. But then hearing what the doctor experienced with the FBI agent, it seems to be that they were, they had the same sort of idea, which was to deny what happened. Um, and he had even said, which I would need to talk to him again to get some clarity on this, but he had said he noticed, I believe he said he and other witnesses that stuck around were taken to a room all together and put in a room together, and he recognized um, I guess the person who came in to talk to them, who was like a CNN representative, who had
Hmm.
been in the crowd claiming to be a witness. So he said he believes that there were a bunch of fake witnesses in the audience that were CNN, that were with CNN to try and get information from the witnesses. He also said
Oh,
someone, because he says he has a lot of footage that can back up all the things he saw, which because he didn't tell me everything, but he said that he I guess was showing people some of what he had, and someone tried to take his phone from him. So it seems
mm.
like people want what he has, but they don't want it to get out. So I'm a little concerned about that.
Yeah, that is concerning to me. So we're a little bit low on time here, but
Mhm.
Dylan, what message do you have to the viewers about what happened or where you think this is going?
Well, I think it's going to be a landslide victory for Trump. I think that's the first thing that's going to happen. God willing, and hopefully, with a lot of people coming together to make sure that the election is free and fair. I think it's an easy landslide. I'd also tell people fight, fight, fight. Exactly what Trump said. He's completely right. Fight for your country, fight for your family, fight for what you believe in, fight for your principles, um, and fight for yourself. We live in what is supposed to be the greatest country in the world, and if we give up or we cower in fear, I guess like if you want to bring it back to that picture we were talking about,
Hmm.
you're not going to be the change you want to see. You have to be the change you want to see, and that's why I think what you and I are doing is so important on our campuses, and that's really what spoke to me when I saw the footage of Trump saying that, and even just seeing him whisked off the stage and trying to present strength. um, I mean, I think we all need to take from that we need to be like that in our own lives.
Yeah, I don't think anyone could have said that better than you, Dylan.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming on, Dylan. And like I said, Dylan
Absolutely.
is the chairman of the Westminster College Young Americans for Freedom. And we're going to have his socials linked in the description of this video. And Dylan's welcome to come on the show anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Great to be here.
Great to have you on. See ya.